So welcome back to this week's episode of Thrive, Your Agency Resource. Today, I'm joined by Wendy Nguyen to talk about objectives and key results, or OKR. Some of you might be familiar with it, some of you might not be, and that's okay. Wendy is a profitability business coach and founder of TNC CPAs in Houston, Texas. We both had the opportunity to go through the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses program. And I just had to bring her onto the show because I rarely hear of financial folks talk about passion and purpose on the same level as profit. So she speaks my love language. And Wendy, thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, Kelly, thank you very much for inviting me to the show. And I am super excited to be here and to share more with all of you about OKR and other topics, especially profitability.
Yeah. And that's a big one. Everyone in the audience wants to know about profitability. So let's start with, for the members of the audience who aren't familiar with the OKR book, what do we mean by objectives and key results?
So there's a book called Measure What Matters, and in there is talking about that every single business or even anything that we do, it would have objectives and clearly the key result to it. Because let's say, so going back really quick in the book, the OKR methodology actually has been adopted by many of the tech companies, including Google. And it was one of the very first method that Google have used to grow them into a multi-million-dollar company. And the venture capitalist John Doerr is the one that introduced this methodology into Google, and he just publishing the book in 2017 to really talk about his stories, how's his involvement with Google, and how other organizations, including the Gates Foundations, also using OKR, and many other companies are using OKR. So, for small business owners, it depends on how's the path that you are across. Sometimes you hearing this and you just think, well, it's going to be more applicable to a bigger organizations, and it's not really applicable for me, even a startup. As a matter of fact, it's so crucial and so important because its objectives means that you want to, it's almost like a goal. You want to accomplish something. And that is an objective that you put out there. So with the objectives, how do you know that you actually attain the goals? And so that is telling you the key result. That means that is tell you that you achieve the goal. So let's say if a business, I'm going to go back and use a lot of money in here. Let's say if a business saying that, well, I want to grow my company to have a revenue of, right now I'm only as a $300,000, but I want to grow my company to be a $3 million company in revenue. That is an objective. Now, well, first, you're going to have to very clearly identify your objectives. It's like, well, I want my company to hit a $3 million in revenue in order for what? So it's really also, when you talk about that, it's have to have a purpose. It's just not only about the money part, but going back to that example, you can say, I want to have a $3 million in revenue in order to really hitting all of the services that I can provide to my customer to be a one-stop shop. So that's where the money part and the purpose part is coming in together. But again, that is just a goal, right? So the key result is what telling you whether you achieve the goal or not. I mean, a lot of the time people think, well, that's the 3 million right there is already a key result. Actually, it's not. The reason is that the key result is you also have to have some sort of, how do you measure it, right? Yes, 3 million is money, is measurable, but the key result is going to be like, well, do I want to attain this revenue by 2022? Is it by 2025? So that's the key result, which means you have to put a specific timeline in there that you, and for a healthy setup of an OKR, it's like it has to have 3 elements into it. Is what's the timeline, And if they say, okay, it's a $3 million revenue, which means you have to get how many customers in order for you to attain that 3 million, you can say that I need 100 customers in order for me to get to the $3 million in revenue. So again, 100 customers is another key result, right? And then the last key result, it can be, I need to have a team of 20 or 30 people. So that's another key result that you can say, okay, now you can actually have a company of the revenue of $3 million and providing the a one-stop shop service to your customer. So,
right.
yeah.
Right. So it's basically like identifying what you want from a financial perspective, but then putting in all of the pieces that are going to be necessary from a resource standpoint, from an income standpoint, from the customers. There's also part of this this framework that you talk about, which I love. You talk about it in the context of the 3 Ps, and you kind of alluded to that. My framework is the 5 Ps, so we have some synergy there. But you also talk about it, these pieces of like passion and purpose. Is there a social impact component to that? Like, can you talk a little bit about your holistic view when it comes to the financial health of these service-based firms?
Definitely, it has to have. So, so I come up with every single business has to have a 3P formula, which means is a passions, which means you love your business so much. That's why you're starting this business at the first place. And then the next thing is that is the profitability. Your business have to be able to be profitable in order for you to stay in the business. But now you're going to ask your question that, why am I working so hard for? So you have to have a purpose, and the purpose have to be very clearly defining. And so, the first purpose is for all of us is going to be, what is it going to be in it for me? When I create this business, what is it in it for me is whether I'm going to be, that's the purpose, that I have to generate enough money, profitability, so that way I can support my family. But then once you at the level that yes, you can support your family, now it's also have to have the next purpose. How are you interact with the community? Will your business, if you go out of business tomorrow, who will miss you? And why is that important? And so that's part of the social impact is there, because no matter what, we are really interrelated one way or another. It's like, I have an accounting firm, but again, I would need a marketing agency in order to get the words out there that, this is Wendy's accounting firm. But why is that people need to engage Wendy and versus another accounting firm next door? And that's because, let's say my specialty is very different from the person that is next door, and there are many people that will need and want to know more about OKR, for example. Then they can come to Wendy firms to get a defining OKR. So it depends on people preference. And again, because it's the community aspect of that. And another way that you're also looking at is that sometimes, as a service-based company, the customers are not responsible for knowing how to solve their problems. We are the one that will coming up with solutions to solve people problems and coming with the creativity side of us to help them to solve the problems. Because if so that's why the social impact is communal is so important, because you have to look at every single angle of your business and how you are intertwined with other people.
Right,
Does
right.
that answer your question, Kelly?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So you talk a little bit about OKR and that book, or the book that that really brought that into the spotlight for a lot of us. The author of Profit First actually transformed OKR into what we might call like a more expanded view that incorporates more of the passion and purpose that we're talking about. So can you talk a little bit more about that OMEN acronym that author talks about?
Yeah, so Mccullough is the author of the Profit First. And this year, beginning, I think maybe March or April, he coming out with another book called Fix This Next. And in there, he kind of lining up how is business, do they need to fix their sales? Do they need to fix their profitability? Do they need to fix their processes? Because business owner are pulled multiple directions. And one thing that I really love when I was reading that book is that Mike actually, the book about Fix This Next, Mike actually referring about OKR. So at first when I was following and adopting OKR, I like it, but it still have a somewhat is not a complete picture for me. And so in Mike, he expanded, he created a new acronym for it. It's called objective, measurement, evaluation, and nurture. So the objective that he has is very similar with the objective that we mentioned in the OKR acronym. He's put in there is measurement instead of key result. So the measurement is going even more in depth, and it say is how do you measure? Like it have to be something that is measurable, because objective can be very abstract. And he went on to say evaluations, because a lot of time, people putting objective and key result out there. What if you didn't really hit all of your key results? What if you only 90%, 80%, or even 50% of that? So you have to really going back and evaluating that. So he putting the evaluation piece into the OKR, and I think what is important, because sometimes we just run, and then we forgot to look back what we done so well and what we need to improve, right? And he went on, and he also saying that there's another component is called nurture. So if a company is setting out an OKR and that OKR are doing really, really well, and the company have accomplished that, then you need to also nurture that OKR, and you don't have to really create another OKR. You may be just going to be changing the key result or the measurement to another quarter, another year. So that's the nurturing piece that is important, because at the same time with evaluation, what if you didn't hit the goal of the key result? Then now how do you nurture it? You evaluate it and then you nurture it, so that way you can actually going back and hitting that mark.
Yeah.
People just set goal, they don't meet it, and then they just run off, right?
Yeah. What's interesting, what this brings up for me, and I didn't think about this before, it just kind of like came to my mind now. This is very similar to like performance reviews of team members, right? So we have these objectives that we set for our team members with their input, with their assistance. Then we measure them, then we evaluate them. And if they don't hit those, or even if they do, we up level, we nurture, like, okay, so you've hit these, now what do you want to work on, improving next year? Or you haven't hit these, how are we going to nurture you and support you further so that you can hit these goals, right? So it's interesting. So you're talking about it from the entirety of the business sense. You could also, in a way, say that this is very possible to use it when you're thinking about employee performance, or you can at least draw a correlation.
Yeah. Actually, the OKR methodology or OMENT is using for all aspects of the business.
Mm-hmm.
Even not just only businesses, is actually you can use it for personally, right? I mean, you can really say in that I have my own objective that I set out for 2020, like a lot of people are doing vision board. So when you're thinking about vision board, it's really objectives. And then they put the picture in there. That's the key result that I actually go and hit that place this year on the vision board that I put. So you can really apply this into every aspect of your life. And that when you talk to your child or your spouse, that okay, this is how we know that we are doing well together. Like we spend this number of days and times and hours. So again, you can tell that I'm a number person.
So let's go back for 1 second and talk a little bit more about the social impact, because I think that there are more and more, speaking of 2020 and vision boards, there are more and more, especially agency owners, agency leaders, that are realizing that they want to do work that contributes to the equity of their teams, the consumers, the world at large, maybe even the planet, if they're working with sustainable brands. but they also want to turn a profit, right? Like, we're not just doing this to run charities. We're wanting to run profitable businesses. So from that lens, why is this holistic picture so important for those types of agency owners?
So, there are a notion that out there almost like, especially with the pandemic, if a business come out that saying, well, I actually more profitable than I ever in my previous years, people may not really saying that because they felt like, if I say that, then I don't empathize with the rest of other people who are struggling. So, but what if people turn around and say, hey, Wendy, what did you do to actually during the pandemic that make your company be profitable? And you have to think it in terms of this way, that is, when you do a social impact that you want to change the world. This is one of the statements. When you want to change the world, first you need to go home and take care of your family. So if a business, a marketing agency, they really want to believe in the social impact aspect, they also have to look back into, am I really first taking care of my employees? Are they still on board with me, or I have to let them go and then just gonna take all of the work by myself? And so it's it's the same thing that you can't just so profitability and sustainability are so important. But if you kind of like, sometimes people marry in the two aspects of it, they feel guilty about it. They feel guilty the fact that I am profitable and the rest are not doing well. But in term, if you think you're profitable, which means you also can hire more people and you can save one family from losing their house. So if you're thinking in terms of that way, then first start with your employees, with the people that next to you, and then now you can really set the footprint to the next level of how to go about it. So that's why, so when business owners, when you go out and you just want to give like, okay, I want to give this free resource to so and so and so, and then but then at the end, if you're suffering financially, then you shouldn't do that, because who are you? You actually stop yourself from hiring another employee that can come in and help you. You're actually overextending yourself, that helping the other business to stay afloat, but then to get the word out, but then at the same time you don't have the money to really bring back that employees. So you have to think very careful about the social impact that you make. And that the thing is that when I become profitable, especially with my CPA firm, during the PPP. So I would apply for a payroll protections loan first for my business. And at the same time, I assure my employees that you will still have job because I'm going to get this loan. And at the same time, my employees now can help all of the other businesses that we have to secure this loan so that they can keep the employees on their paycheck. I mean, so in their business. So really you have to think in terms of internally first. But first, of course, you also have to really taking care of yourself first. It's self-care. This is, we hear a lot about the concept that you are when you're flying, right? It's always, hey, put the mask on your face first before you put the mask on your child, even that. So because if you out, then everybody's gonna be out.
Right.
So I hope that really holding on to people, and there is no notion of feeling guilty about being profitable.
Yeah. Yeah.
But actually, it's important for you to be profitable so you can help other people to be profitable.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point. And, obviously the audience who's listening or watching, I talk about the oxygen mask theory pretty often, or there's a quote by Rumi that I really love, which is like, give from your overflow, not from the depths of your well. I mean, we really, self-care is a big thing that most people just are not talking about enough. So I'm really glad that you brought that up organically. And, I think this fear or this guilt that you talk about, in terms of being profitable or being successful during the pandemic, that's actually a really interesting point. So thank you for bringing that up as well. It's really, really important for people to not feel that way, because look at the impact that you're having if you are, in that situation with your business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is when you hear people that have that kind of profitability, you would just, put your head down and say, you know what, my business been struggling. What did you do to your business to be profitable? Can you show it to me? So it's really help people open up to learn from other people.
Right, right. Well, that's where the vulnerability aspect comes in, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the hallmarks of a great leader is actually vulnerability.
Yeah, but
So
it's take a lot of courage too.
100%. 100%. So I know that you have a couple of free master classes and video series and things like that that can really help people. Can you talk a little bit about where people can find, maybe not where they can find it, because I can put that in the show notes, but just talk a little bit about what those master classes and video series are all about?
Sure. So, because again, with the whole pandemic, I actually post on LinkedIn every day also about, little tips here and there for leadership and profitability. And during the whole pandemic, I also coming up with this 3P formula. It's called passion, profit, and purpose. It's mainly I want to help people. How do you align your visions into your profitability, into your is going to give you the purpose that you want at the end of the day. So is, if let's say that your visions is going to have a really big marketing agencies that you can really providing help to many business owners, then now you also have to ask yourself first, what do you really love about your business? Is it a digital marketing? Is it what exactly that you love doing so much? Because sometime that you will say, well, I want to provide the service from A to Z, but then really you only like F, then, or D or E, then that is where your passions, and maybe that is where you really have to pick your niche and stay in that part. Because when you love something so much, you're going to have curiosity, you want to learn, you want to innovate, you passionate go into it. And so when that passion of yours is going to translate into that, you creating a values for your customers, not just only solving a problem, but you can say that, like for example, if you are really good with social media and you say, well, I can write this post, or like you, Kelly, when you do this thing, you can have a reach of 30,000 potential leads. So that's because you're so good at that and you're passionate about it. And so what kind of profitability that can bring out with this number of lead and outreach there? So then you're going to sit there and you're going to calculate, okay, what does it cost for me to get to 30,000 potential customers? And then the next thing is that, that how do I turn that 30,000 into a customer of mine, and what that cost will look like, right? So, and then now you can say, okay, if I'm spending an hour and I'm reaching 30,000 potential customers, and then turn out that I will be able to turn, maybe 3 of them into customers, and that 3 will pay me $10,000 a month, something like that. So really now that you can see an hour of your time that invested in there actually generating $10,000. So now, business owner are going to be focused in really the hour that they spend on what they really love to do into a $10,000 more revenue for the business.
Mm-hmm. So
That's
that's what the masterclass is about.
Yeah, so what the master class is really helping you how to connect the dot from your passion to your profit. And then also from the profit is going to the purpose, right? So now that you have a $10,000 customer that you need to serve, you need to have a good system in place, or do you want to spend less time in your business? Then how do you do that? And so you have to build a team, to carry out the task, right? So now you go back to calculate the cost. So it's really the 3P, it's just dangling back and forth. is there's no such thing, any specific order, any business. And you also have to really waking up every day and you say, am I working on the passion piece today? Am I working on my profitability today? Am I working on my purpose today? So
and what about the video series?
So, and then on top of that, now I also coming up with a 7 steps how to restructure your business to be profitable. So the main 7 step is really helping business owners how to read their financial statements in a way that it can really tell you what cost it contribute into your business, what cost should you given up, not spend anymore, actually, or what cost or what part of the expense you should invest in money in. So I break it down into a 7 key cost components that every single business owners have to. It's like a mini dashboard, and that's all you're gonna monitor for your business. Because like if a business owner come to me and say, well, I want to grow my revenue to $3 million. The next question I ask is, how much money have you spent in your R&D? How much money you actually spend in innovate or thinking about innovations? And I say, I don't know. I mean, my accountant maybe know it, and even your accountant don't know it, because this is the money that you spend for innovation or not.
Right.
So it's just like, for example, as a CPA, I always have to go doing training. And so if I go into a training and learning more about accounting stuff, then that is really holding on my the core of my business being a good CPA, up to date with the rules and the regulations. But if I go and I spend my time, like for example, we part of 10K Kelly. So if we go and spend our time with 10K is learning, then actually that is the time, that is the cost that for innovations that we invest in our business to innovate our business, so we can get more ideas out of other people.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have to really knowing the time that you spend. Is it an investment in your business, or that should be ripped apart? Because, during the pandemic, people talk about essential business. So to be open at the same time in a business, you need to know what is essentials. And, interestingly enough, I'm sure a lot of marketing agency facing is that the minute when the pandemic comes, the first expense people cut is what?
Marketing and advertising. Yep.
Right. So that's the first expense people cut. In fact, that's the worst thing that they can do. But they never have to, what they really have to look back into is, if I invest $1 in marketing, what is the result that I'm getting? Right. So you have to be able to measure it. And sometimes people are not able to really measure it, then they just cut it up. They think, okay, I don't need it. I'm just going to be really doing everything. Just let everybody go. So it's like, it's really the case. So this, so I really hope people will, because I'm doing as a CPA, but I'm also a really business owner. I have 5 companies that I'm running right now. And so I don't have time to look in that, lengthy profit and loss, and with a lot of line item, news and entertainment, everything. It doesn't mean anything to me. Right. So I have to really break it down. Is that the cost of my marketing cost? Is that the cost of my operating company? Is that the cost that I'm keeping my company organized, like your legal expense, your accounting expenses, right? So you really have to know, and you say, okay, I need to cut this cost. I need to actually increase the spending in here.
Right. So that's basically what these 7 videos cover.
Yes.
So important. So I will post links to each of those, as well as a link to your CPA firm in the show notes. And just want to say thank you so much, Wendy, for joining me today. It was an honor to talk to you.
You're very welcome. And I'm really glad that if I can do anything to help all of the business owners out there, I would do everything that I can.
Thank you. This episode has been brought to you by Workamajig, the #1 creative agency management software. Show notes at thrive.workamajig.com. Find out how your creative agency can become more productive and more profitable. Schedule your demo at thrive.workamajig.com.